Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah. Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello and good morning to you. It is the Michael Dukes Show, the Wednesday edition of the show, and the final day of this week, as tomorrow is the holiday, 4th of July. 4th of July. And yes, I take time off just like I work for the state of Alaska. That's what Ryan just said in the chat room. Dukes takes time off just like he works for the state of Alaska. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Occasionally, we got to do it, you know? It's so funny because I'll hit the end of the year and they'll be like, you still got like a week's worth of vacation stuff and other things to go. Yeah, because I can never take time off. Because I got too much stuff going on and, you know, nobody to fill in on the show because for those of you who don't know, let me pull you behind the curtain for a moment. Behind the curtain. Somebody says, well, why don't you just have somebody guest host for you? Well, my studio's in my house. My studio is a 4x8 room that I constructed. for the studio. So it's not like I can have two people in here, right? It's me. And if you want to invite somebody over to your house to show up at 5 o'clock in the morning while you take vacation and are sleeping in or whatever, and it just doesn't work that way. It's a one-man show. As the trailer says, what else do you expect from a low budget radio show? That's what we are. We're a low budget radio show. And I enjoy it that way. I enjoy being the one man show. That's how it works. But I made a decision this last year that I needed to, if I could get the opportunity to take a little bit of time off, because I've got a lot of other things going on outside the show. There's a lot of stuff happening in my world. And so I needed to take some time off to try and, make sure that the rest of the stuff outside the show, the work still gets done. And, we got some heavy lifts ever since COVID's things have been a little changed in the business world. And so we're working hard on that. So, anyway, it is. I know everybody's, they're so sad. You get time off. Either people are upset that I'm taking the time off or that they don't get time off, to which I just say, oh, sorry. Anyway, so today is the final day of the week. We will have alternate programming on Thursday and Friday for both, wherever you're listening. If you're listening up north off KFAR, you'll be hearing, you won't be hearing Doug Steffens' Good Day, because that's over. There's something new on. I forgot what it is. And then Mike Gallagher, I think, down on the peninsula, and associated translators with the K-Pen station. So anyway, I'll be back on Monday. It's just a week. You guys can live without it for just a couple days. Nobody wants to talk to you anyway. You can't get guests. I tried to get to some guests on this week, sent out a ton of emails, got a few responses, reached out to a few people, but most people are already off on vacation. Most people did exactly what I did. And if they didn't have Friday off, they took it as a vacation day. And a lot of people took off a big chunk of the week because it worked out. You just can't get anybody, It's it is what it is. It is what it is. But we're going to have 4 days off, which is doesn't mean that I'm going to be lounging around on the couch. I got other things going on. So we'll be working on stuff, but be back with you guys first thing Monday morning. Now, that being said, Amy says, I took the whole week off. Good for you. Good for you. I mean, if you could take the week off, man. I am all about that jazz. It's the older I get, the more I realize that that time off is beautiful. That's what we need. All right. So where was I? For today's show. So for today's show, we're going to continue on. We've got one guest lined up in hour 2. Rebecca Schwanke is going to be joining us. She is a candidate for District 36, and we'll be talking with her here in hour 2 about her candidacy, get a little bit of, detail and find out why she decided to run for office and everything else. Again, 36 is one of those races where we need to pay attention, because it's one of the few races that's going to be affected by the primary. It's the one that's got 6 candidates in it. So they'll only the top 4 will continue on. So we're gonna do that. All right. So this morning, that's in hour 2. In this morning, in hour 1, I've got a few headlines. We've got because we're not going to be here on Friday. I just can't let the week go without talking about a little bit of Friday type stuff, firearms type stuff. And for that, we're going to talk a little bit about Chevron, the Chevron doctrine. I see you, Jeannie. Jeannie's in the thing. Talk Chevron. We're going to talk about Chevron a little bit. And we're going to talk about how the demise of Chevron is good news, I think, for many reasons, but for gun owners specifically. And we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk a little bit about the governor's vetoes, because we didn't get to those really. It's been busy this week, all 2 days of it. But we just really hadn't gotten to the governor's vetoes. So we're going to talk about that. And a couple other things. I debated whether to talk about this or not. But I think I gotta talk about this. And so I guess how much time we got? We'll start off with this. I saw this story in Must Read Alaska. This was from Monday, and it was a story about Fairbanks and about Scott Kawasaki. It said that I'll just read you from what I can see here. Fairbanks Senator Scott Kawasaki polished off Pride Month celebrations with one final campaign message on June the 30th. The message included a image of a man wearing an anarchy symbol on his T-shirt, standing in front of a sign that says, "Be gay, do crimes." And he included in his message, he says, as Alaska Pride Months, and I wanted to remind friends and allies this year was challenging because of the anti-choice abortion bans, legislative attacks on transgender neighbors, and bills to allow discrimination in housing and employment. I'm running against a well-funded, extremely conservative Republican who will upend the state bipartisan majority. My campaign needs your support and contributions today and your vote in the future. Please check out my website, yada, yada, yada. He strung together a bunch of phrases identifying him as part of the left and then described and then thanked the Klondike drag as well. Now, this this whole thing about be gay, do crimes is apparently a meme that it popped up first on Reddit. And for those of you who don't know what Reddit is an online forum that's used to discuss basically anything. Anything you want to talk about, you can find it's a bulletin board, essentially, right? The old style BBS that they used to have out there, forums, right? Where you can find discussions on pretty much any topic you want. It's a little cancerous sometimes, but there is a lot of good information out there. I've used Reddit quite a bit for different things. But there's a lot of stuff out there. But apparently one Redditor described what this whole meme started as. And it said, when your very existence is a crime, everything about society and the so-called social contract ought to be called into question too, especially when the things society calls laws are at odds with your literal survival. Now, all I've got to say is this. First and foremost, I don't care what you want to do in the bedroom. And I know some of you are vehemently opposed to that kind of point of view from me. But look, first of all, I don't support homosexuality. Okay, it's not my thing. I don't believe in it. I don't think it's the right thing to do. But I also don't believe that government should be empowered to come in and be the morality police on anybody, because that has the danger of swinging the pendulum in either direction, right? I believe people should be left alone to do what they want to do. You want to marry your toaster, okay? Just don't make me support it, believe it, or have to base myself to that kind of point of view, right? I believe, when we do things, we're going to all have to face our Creator one day and answer for whatever we've done. And I don't think, that's between you and the Maker. I'm not getting involved in that. Just don't make government a bludgeon in one direction or the other. And that's the problem. The problem is either the bludgeon of government is telling me that I must support things, like lifestyles like that I don't agree with, or the other way, telling people they can't, whatever they can or can't do in their bedroom or what. It's none of their damn business. Get government out of it. But this ideology that somehow this is, oh, it's criminal. What we do is criminal. We have never, have you turned on a TV lately? Have you turned on a TV and watched a television show that doesn't have at least one, if not 3 or 4 gay characters and all this other kind of stuff? Now, that lifestyle only accounts for about 4% of the overall population of the country. Okay? But if you watched television or movies or whatever, you'd think that it was a good half of half of everybody's doing it. That, you could be more free today and be out in your lifestyle or whatever else. 50 years ago, you would have been shunned. You would have been probably prosecuted in many places. And today it's almost like it's a badge of honor. What I'm saying is it's not illegal. What people are saying to you is they, one, just don't agree with you, which is fine. People can agree with you or disagree with you. Or two, they just don't agree with you. They just don't want the government to come in and force your belief and acceptance on them. Can you believe that I can disagree with you and allow you to live and let live? Can you believe that I can disagree with what you're doing and still say, hey, you do you, man? That's where we're at today. What they want is what in this group and many other special interest groups in the country, not just the LGBT crowd, but everything else. What they want is they want to force an acceptance on everybody through laws and government force. Well, not only do you have to just accept us, you have to agree with it. That's the problem. I can disagree with what you're doing and then turn my back and walk away and be like, you live your life. As long as you're not forcing me or my children or anybody else I know at the point of the proverbial gun to accept what you're doing, you can do you. As long as you're not spending public funds or public monies on things that are, trying to force your point of view on other people, I don't care what you do. I don't care. I mean, I remember 40 years ago, 30, 38, whatever it was, right out of high school, I was working in Hawaii. I was working on a boat there, doing some stuff, and there was one of the crew members there, super nice guy, loved him to death, super good guy. His name was Clay, and he invited me over to his place with some of the other members, and we were hanging out, and he was like, this is my boyfriend, and yada, yada. And I'm like, okay, great, and I was not silent about my beliefs or anything else, but we were great friends. I didn't care. I didn't agree with it, but there were other things that we had in common and we could talk about and everything else. I just don't understand this whole thing where everybody's got to believe exactly what I believe. No, you don't. And if you don't, then you're making it, what was it? I'm sorry, the actual verbiage here. You are the things society calls laws are at odds with your literal survival. You're killing us with your law. You are more free than ever if you're part of the LGBT thing. If that's your lifestyle, you are more freedom than ever. What are you talking about? You're literally killing us. I just stop being a victim. Take control of your life and just be proud and just do what you want to do and leave everybody else out of it. That's all I'm saying. Sorry, this got me railed up this morning, but I am just so sick of that whole victimology. Again, people like Clay, because I keep thinking about that. He wasn't a victim, and he just lived his life, and he didn't live it on his shirt sleeve. I didn't even know until that first time that I went over to his place with the crew. I didn't even know. It wasn't like he wore it on his shirt sleeve and had to do everything else. It was just a matter of fact thing. Okay, great. Why are you forcing everything down our throat? I don't tell you about everything that I do in my privacy of my own home. Why should it be my whole identity? So nuts. So nuts. All right, I got to go. I'm sorry. I apologize. Got a little wrapped up about that, but this whole thing of victimhood where, oh, you're literally killing us with your life. You are more free today than ever. Got to go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
It's the Michael Dukes Show. Why not take a quick break? Be right back. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
I just get so agitated. This whole idea of you're killing us and you're this and that. And I'm like, you folks in that who chosen that lifestyle have more freedom today than ever before. I just don't even know. I just don't even know. Don't even know. Okay. I need a new pasta salad recipe for the barbecue, says Cindy. There we go. Terry is making a brand new dill pasta salad for this weekend, and cowboy beans and potato salad. And we got burgers and white bratwurst from Alaska Sausage Company and some of the cheddar bratwurst. And we're going to just pig out. We're going to feed ourselves. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. Wait a dang minute. Marry a toaster? I was always told not to stick anything into a toaster. Yeah, well, there you go. Don't tread on me, Christians. I don't know how I would tread on you if I said, do whatever you want to do. Just don't force me to believe the same things that you believe, which is exactly what I hope you're saying the same thing to you. If you're not a Christian, fine. I don't have to believe in what you believe either. You don't have to believe in what I believe. That's called live and let live, and it's freedom, right? That's what it's really all about. If you are an atheist or some other religion, whatever it is, again, whatever you want to believe is fine. But don't try and use government as a force to try and come in and make me support your point of view. Just because you have a gay friend doesn't mean you're not homophobic. Well, first of all, homophobia is fear of gay people. I'm not afraid of them. I disagree with their lifestyle, but they can do what they want to do. I'm not preventing them from doing it. I'm not saying the government should prevent them from doing it. Just because you have a black friend doesn't mean that you're not racist, is what Susan's saying. See how that works? I mean, whatever. I mean, Susan is now a second-class citizen. Okay. How are you a second-class citizen? All women are second-class citizens. I'm happily married to a man. All women are second-class citizens. Are you, Susan, do you think you're living in 1895? What the hell are you actually talking about? Oh, women are second-class citizens. Okay. You and I obviously watch very different wow. Okay. All right. You are a second, only if in your mind you are a second-class citizen are you a second-class. You are a first-class citizen. Again, you have more rights and freedoms, and it's been acknowledged, and they've shunned its equality. You got women CEOs and women vice presidents and women in positions of power all over the place. Women are second-class citizens? Okay. Victimhood is what that is. That's victimology. I'm a victim. I'm a second-class citizen. Like, okay. That's victimhood is what that is. You know, they're literally killing us, or I'm a second-class citizen, or whatever. It flies in the face of what is really happening. Oh, my God. Okay. We got to go. We're going to return here. You are not paying attention to anything outside Alaska. Well, actually,
The Michael Dukes Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
okay. Oh, man, the victimhood continues. The victimhood. The I am a victim and you are oppressing me continues in the chat room today. Because let's move on to another topic, shall we? We've only got a couple more segments and I want to talk about some other stuff as well. I just get tired of people feeling sorry for themselves. That's what I get tired of. I think that summates my entire last segment. You do you, and live and let live. Let everybody else alone. And you do you, boo. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Chevron doctrine. The Supreme Court decided late last week that the Chevron doctrine was never off. They said no, it is not a good thing. Now, what is the Chevron doctrine? The Chevron versus Natural Resources Defense Council, a case from 1984, required that judges defer to federal agencies' permissible, quote, or reasonable, quote, interpretation of an ambiguous, quote, statute. There's a lot of quotes in there. They had to defer to the federal agency's permissible or reasonable interpretation of an ambiguous statute. Now, this again goes right back to Congress's abdication of their roles in actually writing laws that make sense. Instead of writing these broad framework laws that do have a lot of ambiguity, that have a huge amount of interpretation room on things, and then relying on the bureaucracies to fill in the blanks, so to speak. Now, Jacob Sullivan over at Reason Magazine writes a really great article about this, talking all about Chevron, what the history of the case is, what this new court case says, and everything else. But the bottom line is that critics of Chevron has said it's basically allowed bureaucrats to usurp the function of the judicial branch, because the judges were supposed to be able to arbitrate the disputes between the government and the private individual, the private citizen, and this decision tied the hands of many where it was very blatantly obvious that something should go a certain way, but because of Chevron, they were required to give the upper hand to the government bureaucracies. They were required to defer to the federal agency's interpretation of whatever the law is, even if it was pretty plain that what was going on had nothing to do with that. And it basically fell back to the idea that these statutory ambiguities implicitly authorized agencies to resolve questions about their own powers. That's about, they're deciding whether or not they have their own power to do whatever, or that the law means what they think it means. You keep using that. I think it's exactly what it is. Chevron has got a lot of problems. And thank God they have now overturned it. Now, what does that mean? I mean, this is good news for a lot of things, a lot of different things. It is, everything from navigable waterways to federal fish and wildlife issues in the state of Alaska to other things nationwide. But what does it mean for firearms, since we're doing Firearms Wednesday today? What does it mean for firearms? Well, it doesn't automatically mean that the ATF's rules on the new 80% rules or ghost gun rules, it doesn't mean that the rules on frames and receivers and stabilizing braces and whatever else, or even the new FFL thing where anybody's engaged in business, it doesn't mean that it will be thrown out right away. But it makes it a lot tougher because now the judge's hands aren't tied by this deference that they were supposed to show to, in this case, the ATF in deciding that they were the statutory agency to make those decisions. And in fact, you've already seen this happen. You saw it on the bump stock ban. You saw it on, the EPA case where they threw out the Clean Water Act thing where you didn't have to, they already said you've overstepped your authority. And it's going to make things a lot harder. No longer can the ATF rely on judges to give them the full benefit of a doubt when interpreting this supposedly ambiguous language of a law, unless the ATF is strictly adhering to the underlying statute when crafting its rules, which it hasn't, obviously, in many years. The odds are good that the rule is going to fall apart. By overruling Chevron, the court properly restored our constitutional order by ensuring that the judicial branch, rather than the executive, interprets the law, according to Randy Kosich, who's the executive director of the NRA-ILA. The ruling benefits NRA's ongoing efforts to hold Biden's rogue ATF accountable for exceeding its authority and punishing peaceable gun owners. The Biden administration had trumpeted the engaged in business rule as an expansion of background checks and promised to close the so-called gun show loophole. Many states allow people to sell guns privately or at gun shows without documentation or oversight. Federal firearms licensees, however, have to conduct a background check before selling a gun. But Republican opponents and Second Amendment groups decried the change, accusing the White House of using ATF rulemaking as a backdoor way to pass an extension of background checks that Congress wouldn't have passed. I mean, it was pretty obvious what was going on because Congress won't act. He was trying to act by executive fiat. Now, because of the fall of the Chevron rule, they're going to have a lot harder time in doing that because they don't have to defer to the ATF in this case to make things happen. Even before the Supreme Court handed down the decision, a federal judge in Texas had granted a partial injunction halting the enforcement of the engaged in business rule as it applies to named plaintiffs in a lawsuit challenging the action, and another judge had granted a similar injunction against the pistol brace rule. So they're already falling like dominoes. The Supreme Court's overturning the administrative ban on bump stocks before it even shot down Chevron. I mean, how many times are we going to see this now? How many times are we going to see this? Well, now that Joe Biden is also going to be very desperate since he crashed and burned in the first presidential debate, he's lost a huge amount of support among the base, right? There's a poll from USA Today, Suffolk University, showing that 41% of Democrats thinks that he should be replaced as the party's nominee. I don't think he's going to step out of it. I don't think he's going to, which means he needs to make some serious efforts to kind of win back that base. And given how important gun control is to some of that base, he could be throwing laws at the books or executive orders all day long from now until November. They may all be struck down. They may, because he doesn't have to worry about whether they're enforced or not. He just has to put them out there to garner that support so that he can attempt to win. I don't think he's going to win. I think after that last showing, I think his odds of winning are pretty low. But this is an interesting thing. The Chevron doctrine going down in flames makes it's a very, very good thing for, and again, it follows along with the things that we've already been seeing the courts throw out, including the EPA's overarching rules on the Clean Water Act, the ATF's reinterpretation of things like bump stocks and everything else, where they basically are just reinterpreting rules that were already there and doing it basically just because the chief executive decided that he didn't like the cut of that or this or the other thing. And maybe, just maybe, it will force Congress to do the job that they were elected to do, which is to write laws in their entirety instead of just building some framework, patting themselves on the back and letting the bureaucracy take over. Which is, nothing more dangerous to the republic than a bunch of bureaucrats trying to decide, what law-abiding citizens should be able to do. Unelected bureaucrats, career bureaucrats at that, who've been in there for years, and many times do things only to justify their own position or to bolster the government's position on things, really having nothing to do with any kind of constitutional mandate or anything else like that. Anyway, so that's the good news. That's the good news. A little bit of Chevron doctrine going on there. All right, we got more coming up. I haven't decided whether I want to talk about the governor's vetoes or some of the other firearms news. Before we get to Rebecca Schwanke, who's going to be joining us in hour 2, talk about her candidacy. Talk about her candidacy for office, House District 36. We're going to continue the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. All right. I'm just reading some of this stuff. I don't know. Oh, man. Writing laws that don't pass constitutional muster, says Jeannie. I mean, yeah, that was exactly it. And see, that was the reinforcing bulwark of what Chevron did. They would write a law that didn't pass constitutional muster, and then the bureaucracies would fill in the framework of that law. And then when it would go to judicial review, they were forced by the Chevron doctrine to give deference to the government's position on it. And so therefore making it that much harder and higher a bar to pass to be able to actually take and factually, take a law on its face constitutionally. ATF has perfected the use of Chevron. Yeah, no, exactly. Okay. Policy changes opinion of lawmakers who want to construct garbage laws and force the people to fight it out. Yeah, which is exactly what Don Young did. I mean, God love him, and I know Don Young is a folk hero in the state of Alaska, but my last interview with him, basically, he said, well, it's not for me to decide whether a law is constitutional or not. We just pass it, and then the courts decide. That's not what you swore on your oath. They want to construct garbage laws and force the people to fight it out in courts. Exactly. The same courts where the Chevron defense made it that much harder. I mean, John Sturgeon spent $2 million fighting it out over the navigable waterways issue in the courts, and finally won. It's it's crazy. It's a rough morning. Let's see. It's blah, blah, blah. It took an egregious Bill of Rights violation, getting nip in the bud. The Alaska legislature has no oversight over state agency regulations. Ben Carpenter had a bill to require legislative oversight. The bill didn't make it through the House. I mean, that would be super nice if they had a little bit of, it'd be super nice if they had a little bit of oversight on some of those agencies, for sure. Frank says he's not as optimistic as I am over the Chevron reversal. I mean, there's nothing perfect. It's better that we have it reversed than we don't, though, right, Frank? I mean, maybe it doesn't do as much as we think it will, but I think it's better instead of the other thing around. Let's see. And nothing, because he was saying that he was talking about nothing has changed because of the John Sturgeon case. Where's the comment right here? He said, so was Sturgeon's agencies just ignore the reversal. But see, that's the thing. They can't now just ignore the reversal in front of a judge. A judge before, tied by precedent, had to give deference to the agencies. I mean, I'm hoping that something's going to... I mean, otherwise, Frank, there's... The alternative to that is, you got to take up arms. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. That's some crazy stuff right there. The Senate, says Harold, the Senate deferring to bureaucrats to stop McCabe's rail extension and Port Mac development direction is an example of unelected bureaucrats. That's, again, the bureaucracy. I can't remember who was it. Was it Bastiat? Was it DeStarter? I can't remember who it was. De Tocqueville that said something about woe be unto when the bureaucracies rule. That is the danger, the biggest danger to almost any form of government, but especially the republic, is when bureaucracies have all the power. And of course, we know that Congress has abdicated their responsibility, as I said earlier, in actually doing their job, not just creating a framework of law and allowing the bureaucrats to fill it up. They were supposed to create and write the whole law. Right? I mean, they're not even budgeting. They're not even passing their 12 budgets that they're supposed to pass every year. They've just been doing a continuing resolution. Congress has just failed in their job. They have abdicated that responsibility for years. So it is what it is. I see Rebecca Schwanke is in the green room. She's just hanging out there. She's early, but we'll check in. We'll check in with her. I'm 30 seconds from returning, and I got other things I want to talk about here. But she's going to be joining us at the top of the hour, so we'll test drive her audio and everything else here at the top of the hour. We'll go from there. All right, what should I talk about, guys? Should I talk about more Firearms Friday stuff, or should I talk about the governor's vetoes? You tell me in the chat room. We'll make that decision right now. You tell me. Vetoes or guns? Vetoes or guns? Tell me. Here we go. Right now.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Dukes Show.
Okay, welcome back. I just took a poll in the chat room. I'm like, what do we want to talk about? We want to talk about more firearm stuff, or we want to talk about the vetoes? Overwhelmingly, you people want to talk about the vetoes. Killjoys. I just wanted to talk about some gun stuff. That's fine. We're gonna get into it here. Here we go. This wildfire is still burning in Denali National Park. I don't know. Did I mention that I was there when it got started? We were standing there having ice cream in Glitter Gulch. We were driving back from Fairbanks, me and three of my kids, And we looked out and we watched the train go along the edge of Glitter Gulch here, where you could see it from the highway. And not 5 minutes later, the smoke started up from down by where the track was, and the next thing you know, it was leaping up. So I don't know if the train sparked something or whatever it was, but we watched it just immediately catch on the hillside and start to burn. I said, well, that's not going to be good. That's time to go, kids. Anyway, third day that they've closed Denali because of that fire. All right, well, let's go over to see what the governor did. He signed the operating budget for the fiscal year and issued his vetoes, more than $230 million total from both the operating and the capital budgets. There's an article from Ira Samuels and Sean McGuire over at the ADN that outlines a lot of this stuff. The spending includes about a $1,700 dividend per eligible Alaskan. It includes $175 million in one-time education funding boost on top of the $1.2 billion in the state's annual education budget. It also includes more than $60 million for school maintenance projects. Now, he vetoed more than $105 million in budget items from the $12 billion operating budget and more than $126 million from the $3.5 billion capital budget approved by the legislators. The vetoes affect state services that some lawmakers sought to bolster, including early education spend and disaster relief expenses. The reason for the vetoes were, quote, meant to preserve general funds for savings and fiscal stability. Part of the vetoes included $12 million in education funding that the federal government has been saying was needed to satisfy the grant requirements. We talked about this, how they had some of those federal grants for COVID, but they had these extraordinary measures about equity and all this other. It was like the federal government was reaching deeper and deeper into states' hands. And they've said basically that we didn't do it right. And so they wanted to fine us or put us on notice that we were going to have a problem, that we weren't going to be able to have access to future funds. The $12 million was supposed to offset some of those things and satisfy those requirements. The $12 million was appropriated specifically by lawmakers to address that. But the administration says the federal government's interpretations of the guidelines is incorrect. They're in a fight. They're saying nope, incorrect. They said officials have warned that this would cause the state to lose out on future federal education funding, but basically said, no, you guys are in the wrong on this. Dunleavy's budget document states only that the need for funding is indeterminate at this time as underlying funding requests remain unresolved, meaning this thing's still in court, essentially, not in court, but they're still arguing it back and forth. So we'll see what comes of that. Now, we get down into some of the details. Andy Josephson seemed to be the chosen spokesperson for the Democrats on this. He said on Friday that he was livid, quote unquote, about Dunleavy's budget vetoes. He said he thought the governor's practice of slashing budget items each year has slowed the state economy. I mean, it's a $6.2 billion budget and he cut $200 million out of it. I don't see how that's a slashing, but hey, you it's your lie, you tell it. He says the cuts he makes, I think, are devastating to the morale of Alaskans who have relied on those services. There's a lot to unpack in that sentence. There's a lot to unpack on that sentence, but essentially it's the fact that Alaskans have relied on those services. Oh yeah, we've created a dependency state where everybody's dependent on the government for something. Well, we've got to create that program. Well, if we create that program, we'll create a dependency, and then one day the funding could dry up for that program, and then they would be hurt. What do we do? Oh, don't worry, it'll never happen. And yet time and time and time again, it does. It just exactly happen like that. He goes on to say, the article goes on to say, the legislature chose to fund a $20 million request from the University of Alaska Fairbanks to try to become a top-tier research school. Dunleavy vetoed $5.4 million of that funding. So they still got $14 million plus dollars. And Josephson said, why is that? That is bad economic policy. They got $15 million. And you're upset because they didn't get all 20? Choose your battles and fight them, man. That's not bad economic policy. When you're trying to live within a budget, sometimes things got to get scrimped a little bit. Sometimes you got to cut a little bit. Sometimes you got to pare back on your ambitions. You want to become a top-tier research school? You know why? Because top-tier research schools are the money train from many of these other federal projects because they get money from those things. So they want to invest, and they call it an economic engine because now we're receiving money for it's a school. Let's focus on what we should be doing, which is, the whole thing. The whole freaking thing. In a prepared statement, Dunleavy said that the budget that reflects the Alaska Constitution framers' intention to create a strong chief executive to ensure responsible budgeting. Basically saying, I am the line in the sand. That the legislature could do whatever they want, but I am the final arbiter of this budget unless they override him. And that's what the strong chief executive is supposed to be. I mean, good for them. I mean, they'd just be glad that I'm not governor because I would have slashed a lot more and probably been overridden. But you know what? I will do if I was in that position, especially that since he's lame duck, what's the worst that can happen? They don't work with you next year. I hate to tell you this, Mike. They don't want to work with you now. So if you really truly were the budget hawk that you supposedly were, if you truly were the PFD champion that you were, why did you just not break out the red pen blowtorch and just go to town? What do you think's going to happen? Well, they'll recall me. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. All right. Operating budget vetoes include $11 million in grant funding to improve internet connectivity for schools. I mean, millions of dollars were already, but he cut $11 million. $1.2 million for public radio emergency communications. $10 million for the Alaska Seafood Marketing Institute. Good for you. Good for you. If people don't want to buy Alaskan seafood, should the state be spending $10 million to try and convince them to buy Alaskan seafood? I think that would be, I've been to restaurants where they're like, Alaska, 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 people like, oh, it's already a premium thing. Do we need to spend $10 million to market it? They cut $720,000 for vocational programs in the Department of Corrections. Okay. $2.6 million in early Head Start education, $1.5 million for community-based grants at the Department of Health. Again, the nonprofit industry in the state of Alaska is live and well. $1.5 million in adult day service funding. I have no idea what adult day service funding. I will say that one of the biggest things that made my day on this was the one from the capital budget, $1 million for work on the Alaska Long Trail. He vetoed the $1 million that was appropriated for the Long Trail. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Congratulations. Credit where credit's due. Credit where credit is due. Other vetoes from the capital budget included $3.8 million in renewable energy grant funding, $2.5 million for the South Central Foundation Crisis Center, $1 million for the Eagle River Cemetery, $2.5 million for a fisheries project in the Mat-Su, $1.25 million for the Alaska Municipal League for grant writing assistance. Why? Stop giving money to AML, for the love of God, please. More than $2.5 million in funding for the Anchorage Park Foundation. $6 million in several road, park, and facility improvement projects in Anchorage, and $13 million for several maintenance projects from the University of Alaska facilities in Anchorage, Kodiak, Fairbanks, and Juneau. the funding for the 6 university projects was cut in half. So they got half of it, but they didn't get all of it. To which I say, it's a good start. You start looking at where we're putting all this money, and you're like, what? They're getting money, and they're getting money, and they're getting money, and the nonprofits industry is out there with their hand out, and everybody else is out there with their hand out. We really need to try and live more within our means. This is why I would make a horrible politician. I'm just saying that for nothing. This is why I would make a bad politician. All right, we got to go. Rebecca Schwanke up next. We're going to talk with her, House District 26, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Okay, we're in the commercial break right now. I'm just going through who is MD looking at and talking to on his right side. His right side, which my right or your right. There are screens all over this place, and I'm looking at all different kinds of screens all the time. There's 5 screens just in front of me here. So when you see me looking at different things, I'm checking times, I'm looking at, clocks, I'm looking at, video feeds, I'm looking at all kinds of stuff. So it is what it is. Okay. Worse than that, the money for UAF has no requirement that they actually become a top-tier research school. So it was just like money without any kind of accountability or strings or anything else. It was just $20 million. They still got 15 million of it. They still got 15 million. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's continue on here. Rebecca is in the green room here. So let's go over there and we'll test her audio, make sure everything's all squared away. She's been hanging out with us here, doing some vigorous show prep, I'm sure, getting ready to go. She joins us right now. Good morning. How are you? Uh-oh. I got no audio. I think you've muted yourself. It shows that you... Is it... There you go.
Are we on?
We're on. It's working.
Hey, fantastic. Hey,
Can
good
you hear
morning.
me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I can.
Good morning. How are things in lovely Glen Allen this morning?
Well, thank goodness it's not 80 degrees anymore. That was just, for a long time Alaskan, I can do about 2 days of it. And after about 4 or 5, I start to cook. Everything dries out and I'm ready for rain.
Yeah, it was a little brutal. I was in Fairbanks this last weekend and it was 80 plus and about...
Frozen there for a second. Uh-oh.
To it. There we go. My internet just GCI. Thank you, GCI.
Oh, man, that's rough.
Anyway, so you may have to take over for a moment if I disappear again. You can just talk all you want.
Hey, let's do it.
You sound good. You got our videos clear, so we're going to jump into this here in just a moment. So I'll pull you back into the the green room, and people are asking, what is that behind you? What is that with that fan? Is that a turkey? Is that a peacock? What is that?
That would be a turkey tail. Yep, that's my son's first turkey. He was super excited next to his grouse and ptarmigan tails up here from Alaska. So he was excited because it was so much different.
All right. Well, good. That's what I thought it was, but we'll see.
All right. My headdress.
I know. That's what somebody said. What's with the headdress?
Sorry.
Oh, good. No, that's fine. That's fine. We're going to continue here. I'll pull you back into the green room. We'll be right back to you. Don't go anywhere. Let me get caught up here on let me get caught up on some of the comments here to see the thing. Yeah. So I don't know, folks. The internet's been good for the last couple of days, and then it just arbitrarily decides to click its finger Like that. Just like that. It did it again. I don't know what the hell is going on, but I'm about to close a bunch of stuff to see if I can prevent that from. Close that. And we'll close that. And we'll try that again. Okay. All right. So hopefully this thing holds together. Okay. Maybe it has something to do with your GCI bill. I wish it could just be the neighborhood. Everybody in the neighborhood this morning woke up and decided to start using their internet today. I have no idea. I mean, you can't get any faster than 2 gigs, which is what I supposedly have. But we'll see what happens. Yeah. Oh no, I'll have to start vacation early. It's exactly what it's all about. It's early vacation. That's what I'm looking forward to. Okay. We're 90 seconds out right now, getting ready to go. Go to Starlink. I have my Starlink standing by. One of these days I'm going to hook it up and test drive that. I'm still afraid. I've been watching the system and watching a part of a users groups that tells me, and they have drop-offs frequently as well. So I'm like, I hate to introduce a new variable into something that's already not doing great. David says, I went to Starlink a month ago and I've never been happier with internet. It's funny. I got an offer. There's a new thing for Starlink. It's called, what's it called? The Starlink Go. It's a little portable handheld unit that you can only get if you're already a Starlink customer. And it's this little tiny unit that you can take with you wherever you go. It's 500. It's 200 megs down. So not as fast as a full size. I want to try it so much. All right, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the interwebs at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning and welcome to the program. Thanks for coming in and joining us. Hour 2 of the big radio show for Wednesday, this final broadcast day of the week. Just a reminder, I am off tomorrow for the holiday and Friday as well. And you can be part of it. Just come back on Monday. You'll have alternate programming on Thursday and Friday, and then we'll be back in the saddle again on Monday with some guests. John Wayne Howe is going to be joining us on Monday, candidate for office, as well as some other folks. But I decided just going to take the weekend off, 4 days. I got plenty of stuff to do, projects that I'm working on around the house and everything else. So it's the perfect opportunity. If you want to help support the show, don't forget to check out the Common Sense Core. That's how you support the show. Put a little coffee in my cup, a little, shoes on my kids' feet, et cetera, et cetera. Go to patreon.com/Michael Duke Show if you want to help support the show, be a member of the core, get access to the private Facebook group, and more. All right. Finishing up hour one, we just did headlines and stuff around the state. Now we're going to go on to candidates, and joining us right now from an undisclosed secret location in Glen Ellen is a candidate for House District 36, Rebecca Schwanke. She joins us this morning to talk about wood ticks, lunatics, and politics. That's what it's all about here. Good morning, Rebecca. How are you this morning?
Hey, good morning. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on.
Well, appreciate you coming on. I always find this to be the most interesting part of, I guess, the political life cycle. I always like the elections because for the first time, it may be the one and only time that you ever talk to a candidate, because a lot of times, especially if they're a more progressive candidate, they will come on the one time for election because they want to get the exposure, and then you'll never hear from them again. But it's always interesting to talk to people to get their point of view and see where they're coming from and everything else. But we welcome you to the program. I sent out 100 and something emails to all the candidates, and Rebecca was one of the first ones to respond. So we appreciate you responding to that, to come on out and talk to the public. So first and foremost, Rebecca, you're running for House District 36, which is the seat that's currently held by Mike Cronk. He, of course, has decided to run for the Senate seat, vacated by Click Bishop, was left a little bit of a vacancy. 36 is a little bit unique because for almost every other seat in the legislature, the primary is nothing more than a popularity poll. It's a straw poll more than anything else. But in 36, you've got 6 candidates and only 4 can continue. So this is an important time. I just want to remind people of that this is one of 2 seats that has more than 4 candidates in it. But first, let's get started and talk about, who you are, where you came from. I know you've got a lot of history here in the state of Alaska. So take your time. Give us the rundown here of who you are and where you come from.
Awesome. So I'm just, I like to just refer to myself as the girl next door. I was born and raised in Alaska, second generation Alaskan. I do all things that Alaska is. I hunt, I fish, I trap. My family, we for the most part would spend all our time outdoors if we could. If that would pay the bills, that's where we would be. I have a lot of biologists in my family, fisheries, as well as wildlife. So unfortunately, that subsistence hunting, fishing, doesn't really pay the bills. So hence you got to do the next best thing, and so you have to go to college and figure out what kind of career really matches what you enjoy in life. And so I guess I'll start from the beginning. I was born in Fairbanks. I grew up in Tok, tiny little town just over the border. I really enjoyed growing up in a very small rural community in the 70s, early 80s, back when RatNet was the one, television option we had. Kids wanted to watch a cartoon, you actually had to get up really early on a Saturday morning. And if you slept in, you missed it. And that was that. So, I spent a lot of my childhood outdoors, either roaming the neighborhood with my group of delinquents, like I like to express. Parents would drop you off at the daycare, and the local family daycare. And about 8, 9 of us kids, as soon as the last parent would leave, the babysitter would open the door and kick us all out and say, come back at lunch if you want food. Otherwise, come back at 5 when your folks come pick you up. So that was really kind of the start of my love for the outdoors. I spent a lot of time hunting, fishing, trapping with my parents. Both my parents, I was very lucky. I have no brothers, so my dad was really kind of stuck with me, and I'm forever grateful. He took me on a lot of outdoor adventures and taught me that's really the place where you rejuvenate and you get to just connect with nature. And so as I kind of grew, I realized that was something that was always calming for me. I did get drug off to Juneau as a high school student, much against my will, but I did love my parents, and I wasn't an independently wealthy child, so I had to go. And I spent 3 years in Juneau. I graduated from Juneau Douglas High School back when it was just one high school. It did fine then, and I'm sure it'll do fine over the next 5 to 10 years now that they've closed their new Thunder Mountain. After I graduated from high school, I bailed on Southeast. I just was not cut out for the rain as a young kid. I just couldn't quite hack it. Back up to Fairbanks. I enrolled at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and I spent the next, I guess 6 years up there. I received a bachelor's in natural resources with a forestry option, and then I entered graduate school and received my master's in wildlife biology. I was really lucky through that time. I did spend some time doing what typical college kids do, and I worked at the coffee shop because, heck, no college kids can afford fancy coffee, but I like to drink it. And then in the summers, I worked for Fish and Game as a field tech. So I got to go out generally with Sport Fish Division and fly all over the state and really get to see an awful lot of the state that I didn't see growing up. So that was a lot of fun. When I got out of college with my master's degree, man, I was ready. I was ready to hit the ground running, and I was looking for my first biologist job. I thought, all right, they're going to be lining up for me. And well, I was wrong. And turns out there weren't a whole lot of positions. And I did what a lot of other master's degree holders did at the time. And I went and started substitute teaching during the day, and I waitressed at night. That's just what you got to do, and you got to pay the bills. I was continually looking for a job in my field, but at first that was what it took. And I actually really enjoyed that opportunity to substitute teach. And I spent that time in Anchorage. My now husband was working there as a fisheries biologist. So it was the only time I ever lived in Anchorage, and it was brutal. I don't recommend it. I don't do stoplights. I don't do crowds. But the time that I spent in Anchorage that one winter, I really enjoyed being able to go to the different schools all through Anchorage. And I saw a massive dichotomy, I think, between neighborhoods in Anchorage, and parental involvement was the biggest thing that I noticed. I'm going to tell you just a super quick story there. I will forever remember the opportunity to sub in a very small, older midtown school. And I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me now. This was 30. Yeah, it was 25 years ago. But it was a very small school. It was kind of tucked in between other buildings. You didn't even know it was a school. It was very run down, old carpet, old books, old desks. And the students in that school were so happy to be there. They were respectful. They were fun to be around. And they all really poured their time and energy into their studies. And what I really noticed there was that there wasn't a lot of money in this school, but there were parent volunteers. So I'm going to fast forward later and come back to that. But I was really impressed with what I saw there. And I was really not impressed with a few of the other downtown schools, and just very different levels of respect from children and the ability of educators to do their jobs there.
Right.
So that was way a long time ago.
You eventually made your way into other government service. You got a job with Fish and Game. You did that, and then eventually bailed out to become an entrepreneur, right? To do your own thing. Little failure, little success. I mean, It all kind of comes down. I've been running out of time for this segment, so I guess I want to ask my favorite question of every candidate, which is, when exactly did you lose your mind? What exactly, was there a single thing that pushed you over the edge? Was there accumulation of things? What made you decide to say, I'm just going to throw my hat into this ring for this state where I'm going to have to go back to Juneau, which I know your dad served as the Fish and Game Commissioner for 3 years. That's why you were down in Juneau to begin with. You were forced to go there.
I was forced.
But now you're going back there voluntarily, maybe. So what exactly caused you to do it?
Right. So I guess that's the next section. In my career, really exposed me more to the politics of wildlife management, particularly in the state. I spent 12 years working for the Department of Fish and Game. I managed the Nelchina caribou herd. I managed IM programs. And so when I left the Department of Fish and Game, I did start a business. And I'm subsequently in my second business. Life is great. Things are moving ahead. I also spent a lot of time doing consulting work in the policy arena, and kind of a large combination of factors, combined with 6 years on the school board here locally, dealing with education and budget issues on that front. It was a combination of factors. The reality is we all had about 48 hours really to decide whether or not, this was something that we wanted to do or not. I got a phone call from a friend and they said, hey, this opportunity is coming up. We really think that you should throw your name in the hat. And the first 24 hours I was in shock, and I said, wow, this is a huge opportunity. Can I do this? And I thought about it a lot, and I started thinking about all the issues going on. Food security for me is just huge. I'm a hunter. I'm a fisherman. I honestly, I've been living in District 36 the vast majority of my life. The people, my friends, neighbors, they all rely on our natural resources in some way, shape, or form. So we've had some pretty terrible downturns in winter weather. So our wildlife populations are down significantly. Our hunting opportunities are literally going away. Some fishing opportunities have already completely gone. Every king salmon sport fishery in the state is closed right now, and it's July 3rd. This is ridiculous. So kind of combine that concern and food security issues, Delta ag issues, bison. There's so many wildlife issues right now in the state. Combine that with the fact that our fiscal policy is just completely out of control in Juneau. And you and I have a real common theme here. We have an insane dependency on federal money. And it cannot continue. I don't think it will continue. I think we will be weaned off whether we like it or not. So I'd like to be ready for that.
We're talking with Rebecca Schwanke here, candidate for House District 36. We're coming up on the break, so we're going to continue with her here in just a moment. We'll get down into the details of some of the things that we're talking about, including the budgets, education spend, the defined benefits, a lot of the big issues that faced the legislature this last year, what her thoughts are on fiscal policy, and more. We'll continue in just a moment. Rebecca Schwanke, our guest, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Rebecca Schwanke, our guest here in the break. We're in the commercial break right now, and I'm just looking here, see if there's any other comments. Brian says, he says, "Oh, can you?" What? Well, that was not the one. Let me get the right one. He goes, "Oh, can you explain what's going on with the Nelchina herd?"
I probably can.
Yeah, can you tell us about the Nelchina herd? What's going on? Give us the rundown on that before we jump into some deeper, more painful stuff.
Yeah, so I'll try to make it short and sweet. So there are 2 caribou herds in the state of Alaska that are managed at mid-size levels so that we can optimize harvest every single year. That goes contrary to everything we know about caribou. Large herds, they grow rapidly, they get high, they overgraze their range, they crash down to very low levels, and it takes a long time to bring them back. Through the last 40 plus years of intensive management and very careful harvest management, we've been able to maintain those 2 at really stable levels so that we can continue to harvest the same amount of caribou annually, or as close to as possible. I think there was kind of a perfect storm with the Nelchina herd here in the last 4 years. There was a relatively new management team. I do believe that there was some overharvest that occurred early on. I think some cows were harvested when they should not have been. Then it was followed up by 2 extremely deep snow winters. The intensive management program has been cut way back in the unit because of a lot of other internal department reasons and issues. And I think that also hurt the Nelchina herd. So here we are with 7,000 caribou, a place that we haven't been for 40 plus years. And there is no hunt on the Nelchina herd. And it may not come back for state hunters for 15 plus years. It's actually quite unfortunate.
And you mentioned, of course, the king salmon closure, which is, it's a crisis moment. But
Yes.
as somebody points out, Frank points out in the chat room, comp fishing for kings is still open. Just saying. I mean, I hate to make this us versus them thing, but this has been a continual problem in the state of Alaska. That it seems like the subsistence lifestyle, or Alaskans being able to use their own resources, is being basically subjugated by the commercial fishing industry, and kind of the preferential treatment, it seems for me from the outside looking in, towards the deference to the commercial side of things. While I know that's important, Alaskans got to eat, and when we can't get 1 or 2 kings a year, that's that's a real problem.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And in reality, commercial fishing is regulated by the state of Alaska and the Board of Fish, but there are some overarching federal regulations. The North Pacific Fisheries Management Council is a board that does make a lot of saltwater regulations. We do have quite a few commercial interests on that board. And, so it's a big business, it's a big industry. And I really am kind of a proponent of abundance. We don't want too many that we have habitat problems when it comes to fish, wildlife. Abundance is what works for everybody, right? Our first priorities are subsistence, hunting, and fishing. If we can't provide for that, we really do need to figure out how to close everything else. We have to have enough recruitment every year, productivity and survival, to bring back the resources year after year. And if we're cutting ourselves off at the knees, because of politics or because somebody doesn't have a backbone, it's got to stop.
Yeah, no, I would agree. You're going to hear the ding in a second. That's going to mean we're 30 seconds from returning to the radio, so we're going to continue that discussion here later on. Folks, please like and share, like and follow. You can share the show from wherever you're watching it, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, wherever. I've posted up Rebecca's website in the chat room, Schwanke for State House. You can see it up there, schwankeforstatehouse.com. And we will continue this discussion with Rebecca Schwanke, candidate for House District 36, as we continue the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's go. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
That's right. Not your daddy's talk radio, although my daddy is in the chat room right now. In fact, my dad was raised in Tok and did a lot of hunting and fishing, and his family was out there for quite a while. So some similarities there. Rebecca Schwanke, our guest, candidate for House District 36. We got a bit of a download there on her history, where she came from, her priorities as far as fish and wildlife and biology management and things like that. But now we're going to get down into the nitty gritty. We're going to talk a little bit about the budgeting. And you've mentioned how, we have a disastrous fiscal policy, a dependency on federal spend. And I would argue also a dependency or an addiction to state spend as well, basically consuming every dollar that's freaking available anywhere at any time. Rebecca, so let's talk a little bit here about the size and scope of state government, specifically your thoughts on where we are right now. Is it, are we Goldilocks? Is it too big? Is it too small? Is it just right? And I also want to talk about the PFD, but let's talk about the size and scope of government right now to begin with.
Yeah, I think that we are just in this unsustainable fiscal cycle. We have this drug out there. It's called federal dollars, and what I see happening in the state budget is just this perpetual growth because we feel like we are missing out somehow if we don't put up the full match so that we can receive every possible federal dollar that's out there. I just feel like we need to start pulling back. We're clearly spending beyond our means. We're spending more than we're bringing in on an annual basis, as far as the funds that are allocated, that are generally allocated for state spend. We're going above and beyond. The poll from the PFD earnings it's insane. It has to be readdressed by the legislature. We have to wean ourselves off of money that we don't have.
I mean, that's been a problem that we've had for quite a while. And of course, back in 2016, that's when we saw, I think, the beginning of it was the acceleration of the downfall of the state fiscally when Governor Walker vetoed the PFD and then changed how we accounted for it and how we appropriated it, and then counted it as government revenue instead of just a pass through, which is what it had been for decades at that point, where it was a simple transfer. It wasn't accounted against the books as government revenue. He made that change, and ever since then, it's the perpetual ping pong ball that gets batted back and forth across the legislature. It's consuming much of the oxygen in the room. The statutory PFD worked for years. Yeah. And it was only once the PFD started to reach a pretty high amount that the government started stroking their chin and going, ooh, that's some money that we could get our hands on. Where do you stand on the PFD? Should it be the statutory formula? Could you live with going back to the Hammond plan of the 50-50 split of the earnings reserve, the POMV draw? Where do you stand on the PFD and whose money is it kind of thing?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. The permanent fund earnings were set up initially. I think Hammond actually, didn't he originally have a $50 times your residency?
That was the original. Yeah, the original plan was years of residency times a certain dollar amount and everything else. That was declared not constitutional, and that's when they came up with the up with the statutory formula, the rolling formula instead, based just right.
So, so in all reality, we have a statutory formula right now. We haven't been following it since 2016. The Alaska general public, I hate to say, is just completely unaware of what is happening. The state is not even borrowing this money from the general public. They're stealing it. It's something that has gone on under the radar. The general public has no idea. I asked a Tongan friend of mine the other day. She's a first generation Alaskan. She raised 9 children. She did an amazing job. They're all highly successful adults. And I asked her, I said, did you know that every one of your children gave the state of Alaska $13,200 since 2016 to operate state government? And she about fell out of her chair. That's the reality. The general Alaskan public is unaware that this money is being taken by the legislature annually and spent. We absolutely need to have a comprehensive fiscal policy reform. And I'm not sure I fully support this concept of just taking, this money is now unrestricted general fund instead of restricted. And so it's funding that the legislature can appropriate however they want. It's been backed up in court, but I don't think that the public has had a chance to really, truly weigh in and think about how they would like their permanent fund earnings to be spent.
Well, no, because every time it's been brought up to have a vote of the people, whether it was back in 2015 when they passed SB 26, which is the POMV formula, which now directly conflicts with the statutory formula. Yeah. They said no. We had the vote for HJR 7, which would have constitutionalized a payout, not the formula, but just the payout of it. They said no, the people shouldn't have a voice. I was shocked, quite honestly, after Walker did that. I thought there would be a huge backlash, and then the Senate didn't challenge it. I thought there'd be a huge backlash, but it was kind of a ho-hum moment. It was kind of a meh. People just weren't, I don't think they paid attention. I don't think that they necessarily understood what the ramifications were in the long run. And here we are 7 years later, where they've continued to take, again, like you said, $13, $14, $15,000 for every man, woman, and child in the state has been taken from their PFD. I mean, they're shorting a family of four right now. They're shorting them $12,000 a year, essentially, is what they're shorting them between $10,000 and $15,000 every year that they're getting shorted on their PFDs, which is their money. They're part of the wealth of the state. They already got the first half. They got half the earnings right off the bat. Now they're cutting it. Now they're taking 75% of our half. So they're essentially, getting, 85% of all the monies that are being earned in the earnings reserve. And that eventually is going to, it's going to end. There's not going to be enough money in there for anything. So do you support the idea of constitutionalizing the payout? Do you support the statutory formula? Would you be okay with the straight 50-50 split, which again would abandon the statutory formula, but it would be more in line with what Hammond envisioned, of basically saying you get half, we get half kind of thing? Where do you sit?
Yeah, I think that this is a really tough issue. Once you start down a path, it's really hard to get out, right? It's kind of like driving into the ditch. Sometimes you're just so deep, you got to have, some pretty significant help to get out. Trying to go immediately back to a statutory formula, we would see a massive cut in our state government, and a lot of people would lose their jobs. I think the way that we've gotten away with this for so long is that this money has never actually made it to our checking accounts and then gone back out to the state. We're not writing that check to the state of Alaska, but we are giving it to them without actually having a voice. So if you never see it, it's kind of like saving for your retirement. Well, I can live with it because I never see it. So
it's a hidden tax, essentially.
It's a hidden tax. It absolutely is. And I just really feel like we're having a tremendous impact on our young people and our low income families, not to mention seniors. Rural Alaska, the PFD, there's been so many studies that have shown that the PFD has really pulled people out of poverty. The cost of living is so high in some of our rural communities. I feel like we've just got double whammied between pulling the PFD and with lower fish and wildlife resources that we have. It's getting to be very, very difficult to live in rural Alaska. And so, as far as how to go forward, we absolutely need to cut state spend initially, and it has to happen immediately. We have to start cutting, that veto list. Yeah, it was great. $32 million. It could have been 3 times that high. We could have, the governor could have slashed virtually all that, 700 plus million that came
right
from the POMV. So I think that it's doable. I think that especially if we have the opportunity to go forward with a Republican governor, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate, if for some crazy reason this actually works out, we might have some opportunity over the next 2 years to cut, get back to some really, fiscal responsible, just get back on that path. So I do think that the people need to be involved. There are a lot of options going forward. I wasn't particularly pleased with the report, that came out on, okay, well, here's how we should handle it. And basically they just outlined the current situation. Well, let's just take the 5% and then we'll just split it half and half. No, well, that's exactly kind of what they're doing now. So it wasn't a very creative working group. And I know they had a lot of hearings. So
right. Well, and that brings me to the fiscal policy working group, because they had a plan that had 8 or 9 points, and they basically said holistically you have to attack it from every direction. You have to basically constitutionalize the PFD. You have to cut some. You have to institute some form of minor tax. You have to increase the taxes on the oil company, and you had to put a spending cap in. That was one of the key components, is holding back on the spending, and yet Ben Carpenter couldn't get any of these pieces out of the fiscal policy working group was a diverse group of people on the left and on the right, and yet they all came together unanimously and said, this is the solution. And everybody's been like, well, that's nice. And then they've just walked away from it, right? Yeah. And then Gary Stevens in the Senate said, well, our fiscal plan is 25-75. Well, great, Gary. That'll last for 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah.
And then once that money's gone, then what do you do?
Yeah, 100%. And that's where I said that, that split legislature, you just really don't get an opportunity to make some significant moves forward, especially when you're trying to be fiscally responsible. You just have continual pushback. So, I do think that there's an opportunity to really take a look at every individual department. We are just putting up too much state money in each one of those departments so that we can maximize those federal either grant or congressionally delegated funds. We just feel like we have to more and more and more. And I look at it like this dependency on federal money for Alaska is a lot like a teenager and a smartphone,
Right.
Gosh, God forbid, you pull it out of their hand, you're going to just, you don't even want to consider what that looks like. So I can see how legislators are not really willing to do what needs to be done. We need to shrink our government because federal funds are going to dry up.
Right. Do you support the ideas that were put forward? I don't know if you're familiar with the fiscal policy working group plan. Do you support those ideas that it has to be a holistic approach?
Yeah, I mean, I do in general. I'm not sure I still support, pulling 50% of that 5% for state government. I'm not sure that that's the right solution. I think that there are some creative opportunities that we can pursue to possibly separate education funding down the line. I do think that there needs to be some comprehensive reform on the education side, not just funding, but curriculum and standards issues.
Right.
And I think Alaska industrial involvement is actually very important. I think they can play a really critical role, I think. I honestly, at some point, would like to see a second fund that would eventually grow and help sustain itself to fund education down the line. But we have to really sort out how we want to solidify the permanent fund earnings spend. We don't just get to keep arguing over,
right.
the amount of the 50 annually. It's just a disaster.
It takes up way too much oxygen in the room at this point and basically prevents us from discussing other important issues as well. You mentioned education. That's our next topic when we come back. We're going to continue here in just a moment. Rebecca Schwanke is our guest, candidate for House District 36. You can find her at Schwanke for, I'm sorry, I got it right here, SchwankeForStatehouse.com. And you can check her out there. We'll continue in just a moment. The Michael Dukes Show, Common Sense, Liberty-Based, Free Thinking Radio.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Dukes Show.
Okay, Rebecca Schwanke is our guest. We're continuing here on the program talking about, one of the things that it just blew my mind and one of the easiest pots of money that I think we could go after, Rebecca. Somebody in the chat room said, okay, you want to make cuts. Who was it? I think it was Kyle. Do you have as a candidate, do you have an example of something that she wants to cut? I think this is my take, but the example that is the lowest hanging fruit is the unfilled but funded PCNs. I mean, we had hundreds of positions that are funded but unfilled, and yet members of the legislature, including the Senate Finance Chair, said, oh, that really doesn't exist. You are funding hundreds of positions that have been empty for, in some cases, several years, and yet you say, oh, that doesn't really exist. And I think it was Josephson who said, well, that money's being spent on good things. Well, you are relinquishing your power of the purse if you're just giving it to them and allowing them to decide what needs to be spent on. Those are supposed to be for positions. If they're funded and unfilled and you can't get them filled, that money should revert back to the state.
Yeah. I think that, you're spot on with that. There's other opportunities as well. So having served as a state employee for 12 years, I've seen an awful lot of waste. I've seen what happens when employees get tired of their jobs and the oversight, and their productivity crashes. I also know what happens at the end of the budget cycle, and they go spend because they don't want to give that money back. So, absolutely, if it's an unfilled PCN, if there's no critical need for that PCN, it absolutely has to go. I believe in buyouts, early retirement. If we've got some old timers that are just sitting around with 30, 35, 37 years of state service, you have any clue how much money that employee is costing the state of Alaska? And I guarantee their productivity is a little bit less than someone that maybe is 5 years on the job at the lower end of a pay scale. We can save significant funds through elimination of PCNs with attrition. We have so many people in that, particularly that tier 2 retirement status, that are coming up here real soon, and they're all going to be retiring. And I would like the government to be really looking strongly, and Dunleavy over the next 2 years, and whoever the next governor is, to take a really strong look at being able to eliminate a lot of those positions and reclassifying a lot of the state positions that are up at the high end of the pay scale, 18s, 20s, 21s, 22s. Let's push them back and get some young people in there. Let's get some range 14s, 15s, 16s. The other issue that I see is our state workforce has just grown and grown and grown. And I loved our past wildlife director, and I will correct one thing you said. My father, Dave Kelly House, was actually the Division of Wildlife Conservation Director, so he was he worked under Commissioner Rozier, and so Director Eddie Grasser in the last he just retired about a year ago, and he made a comment. He grew up in Palmer, and he said, when I was a kid, we had one guy in the Fish and Game office in Palmer, and we had plenty of moose. Well, now there are, I don't know how to tell you how many wildlife staffers there are in the Palmer office, but it's over 10, and moose numbers are really, really low. So I just think we need to step back and take a look at our state workforce and just realize the more money we have, sometimes the more lax we get, and the more studying and research opportunities we have, and sometimes the less actual management that occurs.
Right. We get baked. It's analysis paralysis, right? We get baked into
I like it.
Yeah, we get baked into that. Let's study the study that we studied before to study the previous study that we've studied. Yeah. I mean, we got books and we got thousands of studies on the wall that we have to, it becomes the Alaska study industry all over again. And it's just another excuse for that. The PCNs, I mean, that was what was mind blowing to me. Some of those positions have been unfilled since 2020.
Wow.
And yet they're still receiving funds every year for those, and they're using them essentially as a slush fund. So that's one area. You got about a minute here. What other area, what other areas could you see as cuts coming from?
You just have to look at the veto list to see just how many extra special projects are thrown in that budget annually.
Right.
There are a whole lot of things that can be covered by boroughs and municipalities. And, I live in an unorganized area. We don't want big government here. Tok, Delta, Glen Allen, we're all in the same boat as far as we understand. We don't pay in a lot, so our services are commensurate with that, but we always figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, no, I mean, you get what you're paying. The problem is that we've created dependency, Rebecca. That's the problem. Everybody's dependent. And you said it earlier. Well, if we cut that, a lot of people will lose their jobs. Well, sometimes that's what happens when there's not enough money and a company has to downsize. People do lose their jobs. And it's unfortunate, but that's how the world works. And unfortunately, government thinks it's immune from that sometimes. All right, we're going to continue here. We're about 10 seconds out. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the stuff. Here we go.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
I'm not. I'm a perfect angel. Perfect angel. I am not a pain in the anything. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. One final segment here. Rebecca Schwanke is our guest. She is candidate for House District 36, which is the district currently being served. Mike Cronk is there, but since he's moving over to the Senate, we got a handful of candidates. And a reminder, it's one of only 2 races in the state legislature where the primary is actually going to matter, because with ranked choice voting, the top 4 candidates go to the general no matter what. Well, there's only 2 races where there are more than 4 candidates. Rebecca happens to be in one in District 36. There's 6 candidates right now for that position. So we've been talking about that. So it matters. If you August 20th is the primary. You got to go out there and do that kind of stuff. Rebecca, before we went to break, you mentioned education. Obviously, that was a big topic. The House attempted to take a quick run at it from the very beginning of the session, but there was this huge cry about how we just haven't funded education. We just haven't funded it enough. We're flat funding it. Some of the misleading, well, they were lies. They weren't misleading. They were just lies. We didn't increase education spend for years. Well, they didn't increase the BSA since 2017, but over the last 20 years, we've seen over a 35% increase in spend. They didn't talk about the last 7 years that 5 of the last 7 years, we have spent millions of dollars beyond the BSA as an extra bonus on top of it. So the question is on education. Where do you stand on this whole BSA issue? Are they getting enough? We're in the top 5 or 6 in the nation on per capita spending, yet we're in the bottom on educational aptitude and educational achievement. So what's the problem here? Is it money? Is it something else?
Super short answer. It's parents.
It's parents.
I could probably stop right there. Yeah, inflation has been really significant. I'll speak. There are 2 huge issues that kind of went into that BSA discussion. I'm from a REAA rural school district. We spent. I'm from Copper River. I'm on the budget committee. We spent a lot of time making sure that we spent within our means, and it's tough. Inflation is crushing us. We've got insurance costs that went up 30%. We got utility costs. We got transportation costs that are far exceeding the money that we're bringing in for those particular services. So yeah, it's really, really hard right now to have ends meet. So yes, I did understand the BSA increase request. It's a lot more complicated than that. We got millions of dollars through ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3 federal COVID grants. And a lot of districts in the state did some very inappropriate things with those grant funds. They gave their teachers raises. They gave their administrators even bigger raises. They added things to their districts that all of a sudden now our ESSER funds, our last grant expires in September of 24. That's why the school districts, in particular the large ones, were screaming bloody murder. They don't know how they're going to make ends meet because they spent beyond their means with temporary federal grants. So
right. Yeah. They ignored the guidance. The guidance was don't spend this, spend it on one-time costs. Do not spend it on reoccurring costs. And what did they do? They spent it on reoccurring costs. And all of a sudden there's a crisis. Shock. Yeah. I mean, come on.
Shocker, right? So, kind of back to the accountability thing. A lot of people want to talk about accountability. And I think that's great. As a business owner, yeah, if you're going to fail at your business, you're going to go out of business and then you're going to have to go get a real job. Education, there's not really that litmus test, whether you're succeeding or failing, the money just keeps coming, right? So we have to recognize that there are a complexity. It is a complex issue, but I do see a slide in society in the last decade that I can't explain. And it is a slide towards complacency. We have teachers that refuse to give homework because parents don't want it and because kids won't do it. And then they're going to have more failing. Well, I really believe we need to start holding parents accountable. When you look at a student's education, it's a 3-legged stool. You have a student, you have the school, and you have the family. And if one of those is missing, then the child does not succeed, or they have a steep uphill climb. And we have a lot of MIA parents that don't value education. It's a daycare. Well, it doesn't work like that. involved parents in my community almost indefinitely see highly successful kids. They're graduating out of here with high GPAs. They're going on to make something of themselves, whether in the trades or they're going to college. They're doing quite well. It's the children that have no serious family support. They don't value education. And back to my example of when I was a substitute teacher back in the 90s, holy cow, parental involvement, volunteering in the schools, coming in when your kid is failing and sitting with them and figuring out how to get them to do their work and get through. So yeah, there needs to be an accountability tool in there, but I'm not 100% in agreement putting that on the districts. So it's a complex issue, but I do want to see more industry involvement. I want to see a complete overhaul of DEED. I think that our curriculum concepts and standards are outdated. I'm not a fan of large scale federal oversight on our education. We need to be preparing our kids for the jobs that are available in Alaska, because we are not putting young adults into our Alaskan industry at the rate that we need to.
So, so the question is, I mean, we're just talking about accountability. You're saying you shouldn't put it all back on the districts, but if they want and ask for these things, should there not be some accountability measures to say, you're an industry? I mean, whether they want to call it that or not, you're essentially an industry and you're producing a product, in this case, well-rounded educated kids. If you continue to have a low performance score, shouldn't there be some kind of accountability? And I'm not saying it's all on the teachers or all on the districts. Shouldn't there be some kind of accountability, though, in any increase in funds? Because we've been throwing exponentially ever increasing amounts of money at it, and yet we've seen zero progress. So shouldn't there be some form of accountability?
Yeah, unfortunately, the system is it's stacked against us. And a lot of people don't understand, but DEED actually gives districts additional money when our children are failing. If we have a high truancy rate, if we have a lack of kids graduating, if we have a high failure rate, DEED gives us more money because of that, to help us get those kids back up. So the system is set up.
Well, they're incentivizing failure is what you're saying, because bureaucracies love more money. And so if we show, I mean, I agree. We're running out of time, and real quick here, consolidation of school districts. This has been an idea that's been floated several times. There's 53 plus school districts in the state. Other states have got much larger, student bases that are covered under one district. We've got a lot of duplication of effort, the insurance question, there's all kinds of things. Would some kind of consolidation, you think, help? Would that be something you would support?
Absolutely. I do see some pretty large districts that we have kind of in Southwest, Northwest, but look at Prince of Wales Island. I think there are 3 school districts on Prince of Wales Island. Even in the interior, we have Copper River, we have Delta, we have Alaska Gateway, Delta Toe, Copper River. There's most definitely an opportunity for consolidation to help reduce basic costs. And I'll tell you, our small school districts, we are stuck in this perpetual business startup situation. When you start a business, you really have to lay out certain set costs to get stuff up and running, right? And then once you're successful in getting everything up and running, then you start to actually bring revenue and return beyond those base costs. If our districts continue to be so small, that's why we put out so much money for operations and maintenance and insurance and administrative costs. Right. We absolutely have to figure out how to consolidate and cut.
All right, we're down to the last 2 minutes here, Rebecca. So I want to give you the floor. Anything that we didn't hit on that you wanted to touch on, kind of your elevator pitch to the people, why they should vote for you for House District 36 and how they get a hold of you, where they find your information, et cetera. It's all yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, I'm 47 years old. I've lived in Alaska my entire life. I've lived in District 36 the vast majority of those years. I understand what it takes to be successful in rural Alaska. I've worked within government. I've worked within the private sector. I understand that incentivizing industry is something that we have to actually support. Our infrastructure, if we're putting money out there, it has to return it on investment for the state of Alaska. We have so many opportunities here, I think, to help improve our natural resources through actual effective active management. We also have the ability to develop our own revenue sources and help grow revenue within our state. Oil and gas production can really ramp up, I think, if we can kind of get federal oversight out of there. I have a lot of experience with federal overreach. I would do everything that I could to help bring back state management authority, because we are the actual organization, the agency that can make things happen in the state. Feds just cut. Family rights are huge. We didn't get a chance to talk about it, maybe at a later date, but parents in general absolutely need the opportunities to raise their children based on their own values. And I really feel like I have a broad background and perspective on things that we can really make some positive changes in Juneau. Schwanke for statehouse.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram with that same name. Please reach out, ask me questions, call me anytime.
All right, Rebecca Schwanke, candidate for House District 36. Thank you so much. Hold the line for a second. Folks, we're out of time. We got to go. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great holiday. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. The Michael Dukes Show. All right, Rebecca. I always like to give my guests the final bite at the apple. If you want to touch on anything that you missed on, like you said, the parental or I'm sorry, whatever you just said that we missed talking about. This is the time. Whatever you want to hit on, we got a couple minutes here. We could continue. So give us your thoughts, your final thoughts.
Yeah, I followed a few bills in the legislature this last year that I really want to say that I think Alaska needs to stand up for our parental rights at all costs. I'm actually a youth hockey coach. I'm a hunter education instructor. I'm around youth a lot. I love to see kids out there enjoying themselves. I really don't want to go down this DEI path. I don't want to go down the transgender path. I just want kids to live, be happy, and healthy. I don't like the federal oversight issues when we have a special order that comes out that tries to derail everything. Alaska must stand strong and give parents the right to. We absolutely have to have the right to choose our education opportunities for our kids. We have two sexes. That's pretty clear. We have male, we have female. And then there's a whole nother category out there of people that have mental disorders in general. I really feel like we need to get back to the core issues of the state. We have to stop spending beyond our means. We have to give opportunities back to the people of Alaska. We have to take their input and run with it. We can't just keep same old is just not going to work. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. Parental rights, we didn't even get into the whole school choice issue. I mean, backpack funding. I'd love to see backpack funding be a thing here in the state of Alaska, or ESAs or some other form. And we've got now, since COVID, we've had 12 or 13 states have propped something like that up because they saw during the pandemic exactly how bad some of the schooling was and how easy it was for them to do it themselves, or to be able to take it to have an alternative. And, that's a huge problem. I got to be honest, Rebecca, between you and Cole Snodgrass, I think you've got two dynamite candidates there. And I would love to see either one of you, hit the legislature running out there. And I hope that both of you make it into the final four, for the race there. It would be great. I appreciate you running, and I appreciate your taking time today to talk with us. Maybe down the road as we get closer, we can, it'd be nice to have kind of a debate between some of the different candidates there. Maybe we can get an on-air debate and talk about some of these things amongst you, or at least after the primary as well. But thank you so much for coming on board and being part of it. We really appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you so much, Michael. And let's do this again.
All right. Thank you so much. Rebecca Schwanke, again, Schwanke for statehouse.com. You can find her on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on board. All right. Pull Rebecca back out, and we are wrapping things up for today, my friends. Time to pull the plug. Time to go on. I got plenty of stuff to do today, and then it's the weekend, the long weekend. And we're really, really looking forward to it. So I hope that you guys enjoy yourselves. Please celebrate the 4th. the birth and foundation of the Republic. Remember all the things that happened and what it took for us to be where we are today. The chances that we're taking. Remember, it's easy to be whiny and bitchy and snivelly when you don't have any skin in the game. Remember those 52 signers who, most of them died, by the way. Most of them died. I think all but 4 of them died during the revolution. They put something on the line. It was their lives, their duty, and their sacred honor, all 3. So remember those guys this weekend as you're out there celebrating our freedom and our independence. And we will see you folks on Monday. All right. We'll be John Wayne Howe's going to be with us, candidate. And I think I got one more. We'll see. John Wayne Howe for sure. We'll see you guys on Monday. We'll see you then. Have a great weekend.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Dukes Show.